So, in case you weren't here when my channel started, and judging from the views on those videos, that'd be most of you, I quite liked Volume 4. It had its problems, but overall it remains the best volume in the series, and a lot of that is because it manages to be stronger than the sum of its parts. Each of the 4 main plot lines have an organic and logical narrative through line, even if it's missing some connective tissue or contains more than a few contrived instances. The fights are pretty good all around from a narrative standpoint. They all make sense within the story. The main issue is the lackluster animation that is downright unforgivably bad at some points. There's a lot to like in pretty much all of these episodes, so here's 10 or so good scenes in Volume 4. And because there's way more than just 10 good scenes, I'll be focusing on one per episode. First up is the first scene in the volume. I'm a sucker for these Legion of Doom type segments. I think it's important for a show to occasionally cut to the villains to show what's going on with them so that they don't show up seemingly out of nowhere. And I like this dynamic. Jessica Negri is so much better when she can only grunt and snarl. Hazel is the most intimidating person there, Tyrion's craziness juxtaposes nicely with everyone else, and Watts is just such an asshole. It kind of makes me feel bad for Cinder. More importantly, this sets up a logical narrative through line for the villains. Hazel is going to the White Fang, Watts is heading to Mistral, Cinder is going to train, and Tyrion is our main bad guy for the volume since he's going to be chasing after Ruby. Now, I actually had a hard time picking a scene from Remembrance. All 4 scenes do a good job conveying what they want to convey, while also setting up and establishing the narrative through line for Ranger and Weiss. The scene in Shion Village sets up Ren and Nora's arc. The scene with Jean training shows the impact Pierre's death has had on him and Ruby, while also setting up for their emotionally resonant scene later in the volume, but I have to give the top prize to Weiss's second scene just because it's actually kind of beautiful. The small details in the scene, like the picture of Whitley on Jacques' desk, are so good that when you notice them, you start looking for other details in the show and discover just how bad most of the other episodes actually are. Jacques and Ironwood's dynamic parallels Weiss's own internal struggle. All the actors do a good job in the scene, and like I said, it sets up what is one of the best arcs in the entire series. The third scene is the one with Yang dealing with her PTSD. There's been a lot of debate whether the writers actually did a good job portraying it, and on any other issue I'd say they failed, but the more I hear from professionals and people who have actually suffered from PTSD, the more I realize this arc was very well done. I think there could have and even should have been more stuff in between these major beats, but I think the most important bits are there, which is all that I can ask for with a show like this. It's not like the show skipped over the most important decision of the character's entire life, Oscar! The fourth scene also involves Yang. Volume 5 kind of ruined this bit by adding a load of unnecessary crap to Yang's journey, but the idea is still there. It wasn't the fact she lost, it's the fact that she prided herself on her strength, and when her friends and family needed her most, she lost in a single hit. Ruby has always been Yang's key motivating factor, and it's nice to see that given some much needed focus. It's not until she realizes how much her issues are putting Ruby at risk that she begins to take strides to actually confront her trauma and move beyond it. And judging from certain scenes in Volume 5, I'd say that trauma isn't completely done yet. On top of all that heavy thematic weight, this is one of the funniest episodes in the volume and does a good job breaking all that tension with some jokes courtesy of Port and Oobleck. Tipping Point also had several good scenes to pick from, but I went with the ball scene. This is really the only moment in the volume where we get to see how much Weiss has grown and changed throughout the show. She's trying to bite her tongue and stay on her father's good side so that she doesn't compromise her goal of becoming the heir. But she's unable to stand aside while rich snobs trash talk all the people who sacrifice themselves in Vale. It also makes sense that Ironwood is the only one to stand up for her when she lashes out. Weiss and Ironwood were the only ones there. Ironwood especially feels guilty because his presence is what made Cinder's job easier. Tipping Point and Punished are a great set of episodes, each building off the other, so it makes sense for the next scene to show the flip side of that set. Crow vs. Tyrion is an amazing fight. Tyrion is a credible threat. He would have easily beaten Crow if he wasn't overconfident and needlessly blocking bullets he didn't need to. And Ranger, for the most part, don't just stand back even though they have good reason to. Crow vs. Tyrion has temporary yet nonetheless important ramifications. Crow's presence threatens to invalidate Ranger's journey, so it makes sense to sideline him so that Ranger has to deal with the next bit on their own. There's nothing like this in Weiss's scene, because she does a bunch of stuff that amounts to nothing but padded screen time in this episode. I still love the Weiss scene, don't get me wrong, but Crow vs. Tyrion felt just as important as it was flashy and fun to look at. The 7th scene is possibly the best scene in the volume and in my top 5 favorite scenes of the entire series. It picks up the next major plot point in Yang's arc. Her training sequence with Tai isn't just a fun little fight scene. It also forces Yang to really evaluate how she got where she is and what she can do, no, what she needs to do in order to move forward. She tries to confront Tai about Raven. The blocking in the shot conveys the emotional distance they share in regards to Yang's mom, and we see the beginnings of the fruit of her labors. It's not over yet, but she passed the easy test. It's actually easier to pass something when you know you're being evaluated. She shows him exactly what he wants to see. She carries that on a bit in the next volume, but might not have completely gotten over it yet. She did bum rush her way into a vault with 2 maidens after all. The 8th good scene I want to talk about is in the absolute best episode in this volume. Ren and Nora's flashback with the Nuklavi attacking the village is self-evidently good. I feel no need to defend this scene. It's the beginning of the most enduring pairing in the show. It's a fun way to show where their weapons came from. The Grimm are absolutely terrifying in this scene. The only reason I won't say this is the best scene in the entire volume is because of how vague Ren's semblance is in this and how bad the child voice actor is. I mean, he's British, but then his semblance turns some Asian, like, okay? If I were to create the show from scratch, I would actually start with a scene like this. Screw the exposition dump, show the Grimm, show why they're supposed to be feared, and use that to show just how important the Huntsmen are and why anyone would want to be one. There's better world building in this one scene than there is in every single other episode of the show and World of Remnant combined. It took me talking about 8 other scenes to finally get to one with Blake. Blake's arc in Volume 4 is atrocious and will make up a large portion of my worst scene list when I get around to doing that. But the scene with her and Sun following the rooftop fight actually makes it almost worth it. Almost. I still hate everything involving Ilya Squirrel, the Fox brothers, Blake's cowardice, and Adam's plan with a burning white-hot passion, but seeing Sun actually call Blake out on her bullshit made me cheer. When all is said and done, this is the best scene Blake has been in since burning the candle, and it made me think for a hot minute there that the writers would continue to improve and grow. That's actually the gist of it. Volume 4 was so much better than the other 3 volumes that it made me drop down my guard right before Volume 5 kicked me and the entire fandom square in the nuts. Even scenes I like are bad in retrospect. Take, for instance, the final scene I want to talk about. The Nuklavi fight that makes up the first half of the volume finale is well written. It caps off Ren and Nora's character arc, we get to see RWBY doing stuff, sort of, and we get to see Jean doing some stuff, allowing him to show how much he's grown. Animation-wise, the scene is an absolute train wreck, where none of the animators communicated with each other, and each one seemingly used an entirely different set to make their parts of the scene. I still like the scene, but I like Ren and Nora under the house. I don't like how RWBY is sidelined. It's pretty endemic of the entire series in that regard, and I defended the scene not knowing that this animation quality is what we would get throughout all of Volume 5, without any of the narrative weight that made the scene passable. I don't have any segue to end this, so I'll just say thank you to everyone who has supported this channel. Growth has been slow, but I chalk that up to my lack of time and money to put into this channel, so if you can, please subscribe, hit that notification bell, make sure to watch my other videos, show your friends, consider supporting my Patreon, and I'll see you when I talk about the 10 worst scenes in Volume 4. I'm Mediocrity4, thanks for watching.